A normal walk through a busy airport becomes something far darker when a pregnant woman is ambushed by her own husband and his mistress. They think they can shame her in front of hundreds of strangers. They laugh at her. They record her. They push a phone into her face and live stream her pain as if her dignity belongs to them. But they have no idea who they are dealing with, because this woman is not as helpless as they imagine. Her brother is racing toward the terminal. Cameras are capturing everything. And before this day is over, the same people who tried to destroy her pride will find themselves on their knees in front of her, begging for forgiveness they will never receive. What follows is a storm of humiliation, truth, and the kind of justice that hits hard. And trust me, you will not see the ending coming until we dive in. Tell us what time you are listening and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Maya Collins moved through the crowded terminal of Chicago O'Hare with one hand pressed against her 7-month belly and the other gripping a folder of medical documents. The morning traffic inside the airport felt louder than usual, a mix of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, and the restless echo that always lived in large American terminals. She kept glancing at her phone, rereading the message that claimed to be from her insurance provider. It warned that her maternity coverage would be delayed unless her husband signed a final confirmation form before boarding his flight. The message had come early that morning. It looked official, it sounded urgent, and Maya, exhausted after a restless night, believed it. Her steps were slower than normal, but determination kept her moving. She reached gate C-12 and searched the seated passengers for Daniel Wells. Her husband, a man she had defended at every family gathering and trusted more than anyone else on earth. When she did not find him among the rows of chairs, she looked toward the boarding line forming near the window. That was when she saw him. Daniel stood with his back partially turned, talking to a woman Maya instantly recognized from a few corporate events. Ruby Hawthorne, young, blonde, too familiar with Daniel for comfort. But what Maya saw next stopped her heartbeat for a moment. Daniel leaned in and wrapped a casual arm around Ruby's waist as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ruby laughed loudly and tilted her head toward him. They looked like a couple posing for a vacation photo. Maya froze. It felt as though the airport lights flickered. She whispered his name, hoping she was mistaken. "Daniel?" Daniel turned. The moment he spotted Maya, his expression changed from relaxed amusement to irritated tension. Ruby stepped half a pace behind him, but not far enough to hide the truth. Maya stood there, breath unsteady, waiting for Daniel to approach her or at least show a hint of concern. Instead, he lifted his voice loud enough for everyone around them to hear. "Why are you here? Are you following me again?" Several passengers stopped mid-conversation. An elderly couple turned in their seats. A mother holding a toddler paused and looked at Maya with concern. Maya swallowed hard. Her mouth felt dry. "I came because you need to sign the insurance form," she said softly. "They said it was urgent." Daniel scoffed. "You show up here because you want attention. You always do this. You are embarrassing me in public." Ruby stepped forward, folding her arms with an air of superiority. Her voice carried across the terminal. "Daniel told me you refuse to accept reality. You are not part of his future anymore." Maya felt heat rise in her face. "What are you talking about?" Ruby gave a faint smile that was sharper than a blade. "Come on, Maya. Everyone can see what is going on." More people looked their way. Someone lifted a phone as if they were about to start recording. A few travelers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Maya felt hundreds of silent judgments falling on her all at once. Daniel pulled out his phone, opened a social media app, and pointed the camera directly at Maya's face. "This is my wife," he announced. "She always creates drama. She cannot handle anything. She just shows up wherever I go." Maya backed away a step. "Daniel, stop! Please, stop filming!" A woman sitting nearby shook her head. "Sir, she is pregnant. Put the phone down." A man added, "That is not right. Leave her alone." Daniel ignored them. He kept filming and raised his voice even more. "Go ahead, Maya. Tell everyone you made this up. Tell them you caused the scene." Maya felt tears form instantly, not because the words were loud, but because they were cruel. Her hands trembled as she held the folder against her stomach. Her breathing turned shallow. Every second under the camera made her feel smaller and smaller, as though the ground beneath her shoes were dissolving. "Daniel, "I am not causing anything," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer, angling the camera so her frightened expression filled the frame. "Say it! Tell them you exaggerated! Tell them you misunderstood everything!" "Lie!" Ruby let out a soft laugh that pierced through Maya. "She cannot say it, Daniel. She still thinks she is in your life." Passengers continued to gather. Some whispered, some shook their heads. One older woman placed a hand over her heart and whispered to her husband, "This is emotional abuse." Maya felt her knees soften. The humiliation spread through her chest like a physical wound. Although no one had touched her, she tried to steady her breathing, knowing stress was dangerous for the baby. The folder in her hand slipped slightly, and she clutched it tighter. Her phone buzzed. She blinked away tears to see the screen. Her brother's name appeared, Evan Collins, her last hope. With trembling fingers, she typed a message. "Evan, please, I need you." She hit send before her resolve cracked completely. Daniel lowered his phone a bit but kept it recording. "You should have stayed home. I told you not to come. You never listen." Maya wiped her face with the back of her hand. She felt exposed, surrounded, and powerless. Yet she forced herself to remain standing. Passengers around her formed a hollow circle. Some showed pity. Others showed disbelief. None of them knew the fear running through her body as she tried to protect the child she would meet in only a couple of months. At the edge of the ceiling, a security camera pointed directly at the scene. The red indicator light blinked steadily, capturing every word, every tear, every cruel expression. Maya saw her reflection in the polished floor, pale, shaken, alone. Then a loud announcement echoed across the terminal. "Security to Gate C12. Security to Gate C12. Several heads turned. The quiet that followed made the terminal feel even larger, as if the walls were pulling away from Maya. Daniel dropped his camera slightly, annoyed. Ruby folded her arms again, glancing around nervously. Maya stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by humiliation that cut far deeper than any physical injury. She pressed a hand against her belly, whispering an apology to the baby for the stress. The folder slipped from her other hand and landed at her feet. Passengers watched in silence. No one dared to move toward her. No one dared to speak. The noise of the airport seemed to thicken after the confrontation at Gate C12. Conversations that once drifted easily through the terminal now felt muffled and distant, as if the world had shrunk into a tight circle around Maya Collins. She stood with her back slightly bent, one hand hovering protectively over her belly, trying to steady her breathing after the humiliation she had just endured. People still watched her, some with sympathy, others with confusion, but no one dared step closer. Daniel Wells remained only a few feet away. Instead of calming down after the first explosion of anger, he seemed even more irritated by the attention gathering around them. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair and let out a harsh sigh, looking at Maya like she was a burden he could not shake off. "Are you done?" he asked loudly. "Or are you planning to cause another scene? Because honestly, Maya, this is getting ridiculous." His voice echoed across the gate area. Several older passengers turned toward them again. A man in a denim jacket muttered to his wife, "He should lower his voice. She's pregnant." But Daniel paid no attention to the murmurs. His focus remained locked on Maya, who struggled to keep her composure. "It is always the same with you," Daniel continued. "Every time something happens, you assume the worst. You were told a dozen times to stay home. But no, you march in here acting like someone wronged you." Maya shook her head slowly. "Daniel, I only came because they said the insurance forms needed your signature." Daniel gave a mocking laugh. "Or maybe you imagined that too. You have been sensitive for months. You cannot separate reality from your hormones anymore." Ruby Hawthorne stepped closer, her arms crossed as she looked Maya up and down. "It has been happening for a while," Ruby said. "Daniel told me you have been unstable. I tried to tell him to be patient, but you keep creating issues out of nothing." "Nah." Maya felt as though her ribs tightened around her lungs. She inhaled, but her breath stopped halfway. She held her stomach gently, not because she felt pain, but because she feared her growing tension would reach the baby. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Ruby, please stop saying things that are not true." Ruby ignored the trembling tone. She took another step forward and lowered her voice just enough to appear discreet, although she clearly wanted those around them to hear every word. "We are just trying to help you. Everyone can see you are overwhelmed. maybe too overwhelmed to be here. Maya's lips parted, but she had no words left. Her thoughts scattered like pages blowing across a street. She tried to stand straight, but her legs felt unsteady. She blinked rapidly, trying to make the tears disappear before they slipped down her cheeks. The tears came anyway. A young airport employee wearing a blue vest walked over, concern written across his face. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked. "Do you need medical assistance or a place to sit? We can get you to a quiet room if you need it." Maya tried to answer. Her mouth opened. Her voice attempted to form a single word. But Daniel stepped between them with a forced, polite smile that did not match his cold eyes. "She is fine," Daniel said. "She always gets like this. There is no need to exaggerate the situation." The employee hesitated. "Sir, she seems distressed. If she needs help, we are—" Daniel interrupted again. "I said she is fine. She does this all the time. It is just hormones and overreaction. Nothing dangerous." The employee looked uncertain, but with Daniel standing confidently between them, he took a small step back. "If you need anything, ma'am, let us know," he said quietly before returning to his station. The moment he left, Ruby sighed loudly. "See? Even the staff can tell she is spiraling." Maya flinched at the word spiraling. It made her feel fragile, unstable, helpless. None of those things were true, but the humiliation from earlier made her doubt everything, even her own strength. She lifted her hand to her face and wiped her tears quickly, hoping no one else noticed. Daniel shook his head like a disappointed parent. "I honestly do not know what to do with you anymore," he said. "You ruin my morning every time. Do you understand that? You cannot manage your emotions, and you drag everyone around you into your drama." A woman in her 60s who had been observing the scene frowned deeply. She whispered to her husband, "That poor girl, he is tearing her apart." Her husband nodded silently, unable to look away. Maya swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight and raw. She clung to her phone because it was the only steady thing in her trembling hand. She opened her messages again and stared at the last text she had sent. "Evan, please, I need you." The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes again. Her brother had not replied yet. Maybe he was driving. Maybe he had not seen the message. Maybe he was still asleep. The uncertainty made her chest tighten even more. She pressed a palm to her belly and took a slow breath. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Stay calm, just stay calm." Daniel continued talking as if airing her flaws publicly was a normal part of a conversation. "You should have stayed home. You should have listened. But no, you came here to guilt-trip me in front of everyone. You always twist the story to make yourself look like the victim." Maya shook her head weakly. "Daniel, I did not want to cause anything. I only wanted to fix the insurance issue." Ruby let out a small laugh. Maybe she imagined that message too. She has been imagining a lot lately. Labla. Another couple nearby exchanged glances. The woman with a knitted scarf whispered angrily, "This is harassment. Someone should step in." The folder in Maya's hand nearly slipped again. She caught it just in time, but her fingers trembled around the edges. Her eyes remained fixed on the floor because lifting her head meant facing every pair of eyes in the terminal. She felt surrounded by a pressure so heavy she could barely stand beneath it. One breath, then another, then another. Her vision dimmed slightly around the edges as her emotions climbed higher and higher. She placed a hand on a metal railing beside her to keep herself upright. She did not want to collapse. Not here, not in front of Daniel, not while strangers watched her fall apart. Daniel and Ruby continued speaking to each other in irritated tones, occasionally glancing at Maya as if she were an inconvenience blocking their path. The crowd remained tense, watching as the humiliation continued to spread like a stain across the polished airport floor. Maya kept her eyes down, gripping the railing as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. She whispered to herself again, "Please come, Evan, please." The terminal air felt heavy, almost suffocating. The tension around gate C12 grew sharper with every passing second. Eyes continued following her. Whispers drifted from one group to another. Maya fought to remain standing as the pressure closed in from all directions, waiting for something, anything, to break through the heavy silence that wrapped itself around her. The atmosphere around gate C12 felt heavier with each passing second, as if the air itself had absorbed every harsh word Daniel and Ruby had already spoken. Maya Collins stood with one hand, gripping the metal railing beside her, and the other bracing her belly, trying to steady the rhythm of her breath. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from physical pain but from the emotional pressure closing in. The humiliation lingered like a stain she could not wash away, and she could feel dozens of eyes still fixed on her. A second airport employee, an older woman with a calm expression and a badge that read customer assistance, approached Maya cautiously. She had seen the trembling hands. She had seen the shallow breaths. She had seen the fear. Her voice softened as she stepped closer. "Ma'am, you look unwell. Are you sure you do not need medical attention? We have a private room nearby if you need to sit down." Maya opened her mouth to respond. She wanted to explain that she was overwhelmed, that she had been startled, that her breathing was uneven only because of the stress Daniel had placed on her. But before her answer formed, Daniel stepped between them with a polite but clearly forced smile. "She does not need medical help," Daniel said firmly. "She gets emotional when she is tired. She always does this. She will be fine in a moment." The employee hesitated. Her eyes shifted to Maya's pale face, then back to Daniel's unwavering confidence. "Sir, she appears distressed. If she needs a quiet space, we can offer one." Daniel shook his head. "She is fine. She has been acting like this for months. It is nothing serious." Ruby moved closer with an expression that resembled sympathy but carried an unmistakable edge. "It is true," she said loudly. "She has been unstable for a while. Daniel has tried so hard to be patient with her, but she keeps imagining problems where there are none." The nearby passengers heard every word. A few frowned, a few whispered. Maya felt each whisper prick her skin like needles. She wanted to speak, to correct Ruby, to defend herself, but her throat tightened. Her breaths came quicker, shorter, and she felt a small tremor run through her fingers. "That is not true," Maya whispered. "I only came because of the message. I only wanted to fix the insurance form." Daniel turned toward her with a look of rehearsed exasperation. There was no real urgency. "You misunderstood again. You always jump to conclusions. You convince yourself something is wrong, and then you drag everyone around you into your panic." Maya tried again. "But the message said..." Daniel cut her off immediately. "The message was probably something you misread, or something you created in your head. You have been emotional for months. I cannot keep explaining that to people." Maya felt herself shrinking inside her own body. Daniel's words were slicing through what little confidence she had left. She attempted to straighten her posture, but her legs wobbled beneath her. She shifted her weight slightly to keep herself upright. Ruby stepped closer, her voice carrying the tone of someone who believed she was being helpful. "Maya, you really should not put yourself through this. You look overwhelmed. Anyone can see that. If you had stayed home like Daniel suggested, none of this would have happened." Maya's lips trembled. She looked at the employee as if silently asking for someone to believe her, someone to see the truth. Her vision blurred slightly with tears that threatened to spill. The older employee seemed conflicted. She glanced at Daniel, then at Ruby, then back to Maya. "Ma'am, I need to hear from you directly," she said. "Are you certain you do not need help?" Maya inhaled shakily. She wanted so badly to say yes, to accept help, to escape this suffocating moment. But Daniel's voice overlapped hers again, smooth and commanding. "She said she is fine," Daniel insisted. "We do not need to turn this into something it is not." The employee hesitated, then nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced but unwilling to escalate the situation. She stepped back, giving Maya a sympathetic look. "If you need anything, come find me," she said quietly. Once the employee moved aside, Daniel let out a loud sigh. "See? This is exactly what I was talking about. You create a scene, then expect everyone to clean up after you. You have no idea how hard this has been for me." Maya's shoulders shook as she fought to keep tears from falling again. His words were sharp enough to bruise her spirit. She wanted to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Ruby leaned closer and spoke with the tone of someone who believed she was the rational one. "You should listen to Daniel. It is clear you are not thinking straight. You look overwhelmed, and honestly, it is not fair to put him in these situations." A middle-aged woman sitting nearby turned to her husband and whispered, "This is awful. Why is he talking to her like that?" Her husband shook his head slowly. Another younger passenger watched with his phone half raised, unsure if filming would help or hurt. He lowered it but did not look away. Maya looked around at the circle of strangers witnessing her worst moment. Some faces held pity, others held discomfort, a few held doubt, as if they were unsure whom to believe. The pressure of their eyes made her feel trapped inside a glass box, visible but unheard. Her breath caught again, and she placed a trembling hand on her chest. She knew she needed to calm down for the baby's sake. She leaned slightly against the railing to steady herself. The metal felt cold beneath her palm, grounding her just enough to stay upright. Daniel continued speaking. "You should go home, Maya. You should rest. You cannot keep making things up and expecting everyone to rearrange their lives for your imagination." Maya squeezed her phone tightly. She looked down at the last message she had sent to her brother. No reply yet. The silence from him felt like another weight pressing on her chest, even though she knew he would come as soon as he saw the message. She held onto that hope like a lifeline. Ruby shook her head dramatically. "She is not listening, Daniel. She never listens. Maybe she really needs professional help." Maya shut her eyes for a brief moment. Her mind felt like it was slipping through her fingers, scattered by the storm of accusations and lies surrounding her. She opened her eyes again only to see more people watching, more whispers, more uncomfortable silence. She felt small. She felt cornered. She felt as though she was standing in the center of a circle she never chose to enter. Her breath shook as she tried to pull air into her lungs. She anchored her hand more firmly on the railing. Around her, the terminal noise faded into a low hum. She could still hear Daniel and Ruby talking in harsh tones behind her, but she no longer tried to interpret their words. Her entire focus narrowed to staying upright, staying calm, and holding herself together as the pressure built, closing in from every direction. The tension at Gate C12 had grown so thick that every sound inside the terminal seemed to come from far away. The hum of rolling suitcases and distant announcements slowly blended into a blur. Maya Collins stood trembling beside the metal railing. Her breath came unevenly. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her fingers tightened around the cold railing as she tried to stay upright. She felt trapped beneath the weight of voices that refused to believe her and strangers who did not know where the truth lay. At that moment, the sliding doors at the entrance of the concourse opened sharply. Evan Collins rushed inside. His boots struck the polished floor with a quick and heavy rhythm, revealing everything he felt in each step. The panic on his face was unmistakable. His eyes scanned the crowded terminal in fast, desperate sweeps. He had driven toward the airport the moment he saw Maya's message. He did not think about traffic or time or anything besides reaching his sister. Every second had mattered, and every second felt too slow. Evan pushed through clusters of travelers. Some glanced up, startled by the urgency in his movements. His chest tightened with fear. He imagined Maya in distress. He imagined her alone. He imagined the worst possibilities because he knew what stress could do to a pregnant woman. His stomach twisted as he searched for her. Then he saw her. Maya stood near the railing with her head slightly bowed, her shoulders slumped, and her hand pressed gently against her belly. She looked small, fragile, lost. Tears clung to her lashes. Her skin appeared pale beneath the bright airport lights. Evan stopped breathing for a moment. The sight of her shattered something deep inside him. He had always protected her ever since they were children. Seeing her like this made his throat tighten with a painful mix of anger and heartbreak. He moved quickly toward her. "Maya," he said softly as he reached her side. His voice trembled with worry. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder and gently guided her to face him. "I am here. Tell me what is wrong. Are you in pain? Do you need a doctor?" The moment Maya heard his voice, something inside her loosened. Relief washed through her in a trembling wave. She struggled to answer, her breathing still uneven, but the presence of her brother made her feel less alone. She tried to speak, but only a few broken words left her lips. "Evan, I did not know what to do." Evan wrapped an arm around her in a protective gesture. "You are safe now," he said. His tone was firm, but his touch remained gentle. He glanced down at her stomach with concern. "Is the baby all right? Are you feeling anything unusual?" Maya shook her head. "Just scared. So scared." Before Evan could say anything more, Daniel Wells stepped forward. His irritation returned the moment he saw Maya being comforted. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. "You need to back off," Daniel said sharply. "This is a private matter. You have no reason to be here." Evan straightened his posture slowly, turning to face Daniel fully. Although he did not raise his voice, the air around him shifted. "This is now my business," Evan said calmly, "especially after what you have done to her." "No," Daniel scoffed. "I did not do anything. She is being dramatic, like always." Evan did not flinch. He kept his gaze steady and unwavering. "I saw the message she sent. She reached out because she was terrified. Something made her feel unsafe, and I will not ignore that." He stepped slightly in front of Maya, forming a barrier between her and Daniel. "If you want to talk, you talk to me." Ruby Hawthorne moved closer to Daniel, her arms still crossed tightly. She felt threatened by Evan's presence. "You do not understand the situation," Ruby said, her tone laced with annoyance. "This is between a husband and wife. You do not get to decide what is happening." Evan turned his head slightly toward her. His expression remained calm, but his voice held a quiet intensity. "I understand enough to know she is shaking. I understand enough to know she could barely breathe when I arrived. And I understand enough to see that whatever is happening here is hurting her." Ruby's mouth tightened. She looked at Daniel for support. "She brought this on herself," she said. Evan ignored the comment. His attention shifted fully to Maya again. "I need you to sit down," he said. "You have been standing too long." He guided her carefully toward one of the empty seats near the railing. Maya moved slowly, still trembling, and Evan helped her lower herself into the chair. He knelt beside her to keep eye level. "Focus on your breathing," he said softly. "Slow and steady. I am right here." A few passengers watched the scene unfold with renewed interest. An older man leaned toward his wife and whispered, "That brother cares about her. You can see it." His wife nodded with approval. The dynamic around them shifted. The crowd that had once looked confused or hesitant now seemed to lean emotionally toward Maya. Something about Evan's presence, the steadiness in his posture, and the sincerity in his voice made people see the cruelty in Daniel's earlier behavior more clearly. Daniel noticed it too. His expression darkened with a mix of frustration and discomfort. He stepped forward as if to reclaim control of the situation. "Evan, step aside. You are making it worse." Evan slowly rose from his kneeling position, turning toward Daniel once more. His height and calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Daniel's agitation. "No," Evan said. "You made it worse, and you are not coming near her again until she is calm." The firmness in his voice carried through the gate area. Even passengers who had not been paying attention earlier now looked toward the confrontation. Daniel bristled under the weight of those watching eyes. Ruby attempted to intervene again. "Evan, you are misunderstanding everything. Daniel is trying to help. Maya is just overwhelmed." Evan did not even glance at her. "If she is overwhelmed, it is because of the way she has been treated," he said. "Not because of anything she imagined." Maya took a deeper breath. Being near her brother steadied her trembling. She leaned slightly toward him, her shoulder brushing his arm. The sense of isolation that had suffocated her earlier began to lift. With Evan beside her, she no longer felt like a target surrounded by strangers. She felt protected. She felt seen. Daniel noticed her calming down in Evan's presence, and irritation creased his features. He took another step, but Evan shifted just enough to block the path without making the gesture aggressive. It was simply firm. A line drawn without needing to raise a hand. The entire area seemed to fall into a moment of quiet tension. Every person watching felt the electricity in the air, the clash between two men standing for two very different truths. Maya sat between them, breathing slowly, gathering every bit of strength she could while her brother stood like a shield made of quiet determination. The silence deepened, thick and heavy, as the standoff continued. Evan did not back down. Daniel did not retreat. Ruby hovered anxiously, and the gathered passengers waited, sensing that something far larger than a simple airport argument was unfolding right in front of them. The commotion around Gate C-12 had reached a tense stillness, the kind of stillness that feels heavier than noise. Travelers remained gathered nearby, some seated, some standing, all watching the emotional wreckage that had unfolded between Maya Collins and her husband. Evan stayed beside Maya with one steady hand on her shoulder while she tried to breathe evenly. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a fragile steadiness now that she was no longer alone. Then a new presence approached. A uniformed airport security officer stepped forward, holding a tablet in his hands. The officer moved with purpose, and the people nearby instinctively shifted to make room. His voice was calm but authoritative as he addressed the group. "We reviewed the camera feeds," he said. Everything from the past several minutes is recorded. A wave of quiet rolled through the gate area. Even those who had been whispering fell silent. Daniel's posture stiffened. Ruby's arms tightened across her chest. Evan kept his expression controlled, but tension moved across his jawline. Maya's grip on the railing weakened slightly, but she stayed upright with Evan's support. The officer lowered the tablet, so everyone in the immediate group could see the screen. "We are going to play the footage," he said. "This should clarify what happened." He tapped the screen, and the video began. The terminal fell into a hush. The footage opened with a clear view of Daniel standing with Ruby near the boarding line, his arm around her waist. Their laughter filled the audio. The crisp clarity of the recording made every expression easy to see. When Maya walked into frame, the sound captured her soft, trembling voice as she called Daniel's name. Then the moment of shock appeared. Everyone in the recording saw Daniel turn and raise his voice. His words echoed through the speakers. "Why are you here? Are you following me again?" The tone sounded even harsher coming from the device. A woman in the gate area gasped under her breath. The video continued. Maya's soft explanation, her visible distress, Daniel mocking her, Ruby leaning forward with a cruel smirk. The recorded audio played Ruby's words clearly. "You are not part of his future." Several people in the gathered crowd shook their heads in disbelief. The footage then showed Daniel lifting his phone and beginning the live stream. "This is my wife. She always creates drama." His voice filled the tablet speaker. In the recording, Maya took a step backward, visibly shaken. Her hand trembled around the folder she carried. It was impossible to interpret the moment as anything other than humiliation. A mother standing near the real scene whispered to her teenage daughter, "That is awful. Poor woman." The daughter nodded, eyes fixed on the video. The playback continued. Ruby's voice filled the speakers again. "She has been unstable." The cruelty in her tone was unmistakable. Daniel's proud posture as he demanded Maya apologize appeared next. The angle of the security camera captured Maya's tears, reflecting the bright airport lights as she folded inward on herself, still trying to remain calm for her child. The footage shifted slightly as the camera angle adjusted, now showing more of the surrounding area. It captured Maya gripping the railing to steady herself. It captured her shallow breathing. It captured her attempt to answer the concerned employee before Daniel cut her off. There was no moment, not even for a second, where Maya raised her voice or caused disruption. The truth was unmistakable. The officer paused the video. Silence spread through the gate, but it was not the silence of confusion anymore. It was the silence of clarity, the silence of a truth exposed. An elderly man who had been seated earlier stood up slowly. "This shows everything," he said to his wife. "She did nothing wrong." Daniel looked away, his confident posture now cracked around the edges. Ruby's mouth tightened into a thin line as she avoided meeting anyone's eyes. The shift in their demeanor was small but undeniable. Their certainty had begun to crumble. The officer continued speaking. "As you all saw, Mrs. Collins did not instigate anything. She remained passive the entire time. The disruption came from raised voices and aggressive behavior that was directed at her." Maya pressed her hand against her stomach. The pressure in her chest eased a little. Hearing the officer acknowledge what she had endured brought a warmth of validation that she had been desperately needing since this nightmare began. She did not lift her eyes yet. She simply focused on breathing. Evan stood taller as he listened. He rested his hand on Maya's shoulder again. "Thank you for showing that," he said to the officer. His voice remained even, but the undercurrent of restrained anger was unmistakable. The officer nodded. "It was our responsibility to clarify the situation," he said. "And based on what we have seen, Mrs. Collins was not at fault." The passengers around them reacted immediately. A woman near the railing shook her head with frustration. "She was telling the truth," she said loudly enough for Daniel to hear. She tried to explain, and he would not let her. Another traveler, a man in his 20s, exhaled sharply. He was humiliating her. The video is clear. Daniel's eyes darted between the screen and the crowd. His confidence wavered. He opened his mouth, attempting to regain control. "You are seeing it out of context," he said. "She has been emotional for—" The officer interrupted firmly. "The footage shows the entire interaction. There is no missing context." Daniel closed his mouth. His jaw clenched. His eyes shifted to Ruby. Ruby stepped forward in an attempt to salvage the situation. She exaggerated, Ruby said. She is always overwhelmed. You cannot judge everything based on a single video. The officer turned the tablet toward Ruby for a moment. The video shows you making comments that contributed directly to her distress. Ruby hesitated. Her gaze flickered. I was only trying to help. It did not come across that way, the officer replied. More people in the terminal watched quietly. A few arms folded. A few heads shook. The energy that once felt like judgment toward Maya had completely reversed. Now every pair of eyes held a different weight. Sympathy for Maya, disapproval for Daniel and Ruby. Maya finally lifted her gaze toward the tablet. Seeing herself in the recording made her chest tighten again. She watched her own trembling hands. She watched her own panicked breaths. She watched the moment. She nearly crumbled. Tears collected at the corners of her eyes. But this time, they came not from humiliation, but from the overwhelming release of witnessing the truth captured so precisely. Evan noticed her reaction and placed his hand over hers. "You are okay now," he whispered. The officer paused the footage on the final frame, Maya standing alone, Daniel glaring down at her, Ruby smirking, a perfect snapshot of everything that had happened. "Based on what we have seen," the officer said, "Mrs. Collins was the victim of repeated verbal and emotional aggression. She did not engage in disruptive behavior. She did not cause the scene. She reacted appropriately under stress." Daniel swallowed. His expression shifted from defensive irritation to a flicker of fear. Ruby took a small step back, as if trying to distance herself from the consequences. The officer closed the tablet. The echo of the truth hung in the air. Every person near Gate C12 understood that the situation had changed. The tide had turned. And for the first time, Maya felt the weight of the world begin to lift from her shoulders. The air at Gate C12 felt strange after the security officer closed the tablet. The truth had been shown, the crowd had shifted, yet no one moved away. It was as if the entire terminal held its breath, waiting to see what Daniel Wells would do now that the mask had slipped. The bright airport lights reflected off his face, revealing the faint panic starting to rise beneath his forced composure. Daniel cleared his throat and tried to stand taller. "That video does not show everything," he said. His voice sounded strained, stretched thin by the pressure surrounding him. "There are things it missed. There is more going on than people realize." No one responded. The officer remained silent. Evan stayed beside Maya without shifting his stance. Maya kept her eyes down, still breathing slowly. The only movement came from a few travelers leaning closer, wanting to hear every word that followed. Daniel tried again, louder this time. "You cannot judge the situation from that alone. She has been emotional for months. There is so much context you do not see. It is unfair to conclude anything from a short clip." Ruby Hawthorne immediately stepped next to him, her nervous energy obvious. She nodded rapidly as if agreeing before speaking. "Exactly. She has been overwhelmed. People misunderstand. Maya is exaggerating the situation. She always gets this way when she feels stressed." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. They had already seen the footage. They had already heard the tone Ruby used in the video. Trying to paint Maya as the problem now sounded desperate. Evan straightened slowly. He turned toward Daniel with a calmness that felt like pressure building in the room. "Stop," Evan said. Not loud, not angry, but final. "You have been lying since the moment she arrived. Everyone here saw what happened." Daniel snapped his head toward him. "You do not know anything about our marriage. You do not know what she is like at home. She manipulates situations to make me look bad. She ruins everything when she is emotional. She has always been this way." Evan did not blink. The video showed exactly who was manipulating. Daniel's face flushed a deeper shade of red. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out for a moment. His confidence faltered. He looked to Ruby for help. Ruby rushed forward again. "Maya is overwhelmed," she insisted. "Daniel has been trying to help her. She just cannot see that. She twists everything. She cannot accept responsibility. She is pregnant and emotional. That is all this is." A woman in the crowd muttered, "That is enough. Just stop." The woman sounded tired of hearing Ruby talk. Daniel attempted to recover. "People misunderstand. I was trying to calm her down. She created a scene. You do not see what she puts me through." Evan stepped slightly forward. "She reached out to me because she was terrified. She sent that message because she thought something was wrong. And instead of helping her, you humiliated her in front of strangers." Daniel bristled. It was not humiliation, it was frustration. She shows up at the worst times. She always picks fights. She always tries to make me look like the bad guy. Evan's voice remained steady. She did not raise her voice once. You did. She did not provoke you. You provoked her. And the entire gate saw the truth. Daniel's composure cracked again. His breathing grew harder. He pointed a finger at Evan. You always interfere. You always act like her savior. You never let her handle things on her own. Evan did not react to the gesture. She does not have to handle abuse alone. The word hung in the air like a shock wave. Abuse. It was the word no one had spoken aloud yet, but the word everyone had been thinking. The crowd reacted instantly. Some whispered. Some shook their heads. Some looked at Daniel with unmistakable disapproval. Daniel's voice rose, losing control. She ruins my life. She ruins everything. I cannot even take a trip without her inserting herself. I cannot breathe without her making it about her needs. Ruby grabbed Daniel's sleeve. Daniel, stop talking. He yanked his arm away, the motion sharp enough to make Ruby step back in embarrassment. Her face reddened as several people stared openly at her. The moment exposed another crack between them. Evan moved just slightly closer to Maya. Not aggressive, not threatening, just the instinctive movement of someone stepping between danger and someone they care about. Everyone heard you, Evan said. Everyone understood exactly who caused this. Maya sat silently, hands pressed together in her lap. She felt her breathing returning to a steady rhythm. She did not speak. She did not need to. The truth stood on its own now, reflected in every person watching. The crowd murmured louder. A man near the window spoke first. You should be ashamed of yourself. Another woman added, she did nothing wrong. You need to walk away. An older man shook his head with disdain. A husband should never speak to his wife like that. Daniel looked around desperately as the voices grew. His eyes darted from face to face, searching for even one person to support him. There were none. He attempted to smile, but it came out crooked. People do not understand. He tried again. She manipulates situations. You are all being fooled. No one bought it. The silence between the scattered comments felt colder than anything else. Evan spoke again, this time with clear finality. Everyone saw what happened. You cannot twist this anymore. Daniel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound formed. His arguments were exhausted. His lies had collapsed under the weight of eyewitnesses and recorded truth. He looked at Ruby, but she no longer had anything to offer. Her earlier confidence had dissolved. Her eyes shifted downward as if trying to escape the tension, anchoring them in place. Maya watched the exchange quietly. She felt a gentle pulse of hope, not loud, not triumphant, just steady. Evan's presence beside her made her feel grounded again. She leaned slightly toward him. Her breathing grew calmer. Ruby slowly stepped away from Daniel, her posture smaller than before. The crowd continued staring. No one looked away. No one pretended neutrality. The atmosphere had twisted completely. Moments earlier, Maya had stood trembling under suspicion and humiliation. Now Daniel and Ruby stood under the weight of judgment. Daniel's voice finally emerged again, but faintly. This is all being blown out of proportion. No one answered him. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, suffocating. Every person at Gate C12 seemed to sense that something irreversible had happened. The power Daniel once held over the narrative was gone. The control he tried to maintain had slipped through his fingers, and the truth, now fully exposed, filled every corner of the terminal. Maya exhaled slowly and closed her eyes for a moment. Evan remained beside her, strong and steady. Daniel and Ruby stood frozen across from them, shaken by the shift they had never expected. The tension settled into the air like a storm waiting to break, pressing down on everyone who stood within its reach. Everyone knew the confrontation was not over, but no one could predict what the next moment would bring. For several long moments, Maya Collins sat in silence, listening to the murmurs around Gate C12 fade into a gentle hum. The humiliation had torn through her like a cold wind, but the truth shown on the security video had begun to stitch her strength back together. For the first time since she walked into the terminal, her breathing steadied in a natural rhythm. She lifted her gaze slowly, no longer staring at the floor. The shift was small, but everyone near her felt it. The woman who had trembled minutes earlier now held a quiet clarity in her eyes. Evan remained beside her, one hand still resting gently on her shoulder. His presence grounded her. The chaos surrounding them could not reach her as long as he stood there. He leaned slightly toward her and spoke softly. "You are safe. You can say whatever you need to say." His voice carried no pressure, only reassurance. Maya nodded, a faint tremor still running through her hands, but her expression strengthened with each breath. She placed her palm over her belly, as if silently promising her child that she would be strong. Then she pushed herself up from the seat. Her legs wobbled at first. Evan steadied her with a light touch, then stepped back just enough to let her stand on her own. Conversations across the gate quieted, replaced by a hush that moved like a ripple. Dozens of eyes shifted toward her. Daniel stiffened. Ruby froze. Even the security officer kept still. Maya took one small step, then another. She faced Daniel directly. Her voice did not come immediately. She allowed the silence to settle, allowed her own emotions to find their shape. When she finally spoke, her tone trembled, but it did not break. "I came here because of a message," she said. "A message that said the insurance papers needed your signature. I thought it was important. I thought I was helping you." Low. Daniel opened his mouth, but before he could cut in, the same older woman who had defended Maya earlier spoke from the background. "Let her speak." Others nodded. Daniel closed his mouth sharply. Maya continued. "I was scared I would cause problems for you if I did not come. I rushed here. I tried to stay calm for the baby. I tried to explain that to you." Her voice thickened slightly with emotion, but she drew another deep breath and kept speaking. "I was not trying to create a scene. I was not following you. I did not come here to embarrass you." Her hand tightened over her belly. The crowd leaned closer to hear. "When I saw you with her," she said, glancing briefly at Ruby, "I did not know what to think. But I did not accuse you of anything. I did not yell. I did not push. I only asked why you were with her." Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes darted around, looking for someone to rescue him from the silence pressing in. "You humiliated me," Maya said. "You lifted your phone and live-streamed me. You told everyone I was dramatic. You told strangers I ruin everything. You told me to apologize to you in public." Her voice wavered, but she did not lower her gaze. A young mother in the back whispered, "She is so brave." A retired couple near the windows nodded in quiet agreement. Maya swallowed. "And Ruby, you told everyone I am unstable. You said I imagine things. You said I exaggerate everything. You made me look weak on purpose. You knew I was scared. You knew I was trying to breathe. And you still said those things." Ruby's posture shrank. She looked at the floor while a few travelers shook their heads with disapproval. "I was terrified," Maya continued. "I felt trapped between your words and the way everyone stared at me. I could not breathe. I could not find my voice. I felt alone in a place full of people." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He tried to speak. "Maya, that is not what—" "Let her speak." A man near the boarding line said firmly. Daniel's mouth snapped shut again. Maya looked around slowly, her eyes glistening. "I tried to stay calm for the baby. I tried not to fall apart. I tried to keep standing when my legs wanted to collapse. I held the railing because I thought if I fainted, something might happen to the child." A ripple of sympathy moved through the gate. Even the security officer's expression softened. "I am tired," Maya said. "I am tired of being spoken for. I am tired of being told what I feel. I am tired of being dismissed." Her voice steadied. "I am done being spoken over. I am done being humiliated." The words landed like a shock. Sharp, clear, final. Evan straightened beside her, pride flickering across his face. The crowd responded with a quiet, unified stillness, the kind that holds respect rather than judgment. Several travelers exchanged glances of admiration. A woman whispered, "Good for her." Daniel stared at Maya as if she had become someone he no longer recognized. His voice faltered when he finally tried to speak. "Maya, you are being emotional. You are twisting." But the crowd was no longer on his side. A college-age traveler shook his head. "Dude, stop. Everyone saw what you did." Ruby looked equally stunned. Her earlier confidence evaporated. She had no comeback, no smirk, no cutting remark. She simply stood still, a faint flush creeping up her neck as she realized no one believed her anymore. Maya did not raise her voice. She did not step forward aggressively. She did not accuse beyond what she had lived. She simply stood there, shoulders trembling but held high, breathing through a storm she had endured alone. She placed her hand over her belly once more, a gesture that felt protective and symbolic. Evan moved half a step closer, the unwavering shield he had been since he arrived. But this moment belonged to her. He knew it, the crowd knew it, and Daniel and Ruby felt it. Maya stood taller, despite the weakness still threading through her body. The silence around her was deep, respectful, almost reverent. It was the silence of a woman reclaiming something she had lost. Her voice, her dignity, her strength. No one moved. No one spoke. Every eye in the terminal remained fixed on her, witnessing the moment a woman who had been pushed to her breaking point stood up again. The tension settled over the gate like a soft but powerful wave. Maya breathed in. Evan remained steady beside her. Daniel and Ruby froze, unable to undo what had just happened. And Gate C12 waited in a hush, knowing everything had just shifted. The tension at Gate C12 settled into a strange, heavy quiet. The crowd remained gathered, no longer out of curiosity but out of a shared sense that something important was unfolding. Maya Collins stood close to her brother, one hand resting lightly against her belly. Her breaths came steadier now, but her body still trembled from the emotional storm she had endured. Her eyes remained lowered for a moment until the sound of firm footsteps approached. 2 additional airport security officers walked toward the group with serious expressions. They carried radios clipped to their belts and wore the kind of posture that made people instinctively step aside. The first officer, a tall woman with a calm but commanding presence, lifted her hand slightly. "Everyone, please maintain distance and remain orderly," she said. "We need to separate parties involved until we complete protocol." The gate area quieted even further. Evan placed a steadying hand on Maya's back and guided her one step backward. Daniel Wells stiffened as the officers approached him. Ruby Hawthorne shifted nervously, her arms hugging her own torso as if shielding herself. "Sir," the second officer said to Daniel, "we need you to stand over here and provide your ID." He gestured toward a small open space away from Maya and Evan. Daniel let out a frustrated breath. "This is unnecessary," he protested. "We already explained the situation." "Yes." The officer's expression did not shift. "ID, please." Daniel hesitated before pulling out his wallet and handing over his driver's license. His fingers twitched, and although he tried to look confident, his jaw tightened with visible frustration. He spoke through clenched teeth. "She exaggerated everything. She caused a scene. You are wasting time." The officer continued without reacting. "We reviewed the footage before approaching. We will speak to each of you separately." Ruby stepped forward quickly. "Wait, Maya has been unstable. We were trying to calm her down. The video does not show the whole thing." The first officer glanced at Ruby. "We watched the complete camera feed from the past 15 minutes, not just the short clip." She spoke evenly, but her words carried a decisive weight. "The behavior captured on video shows verbal aggression directed at a pregnant passenger. That is a public disturbance, and it is a serious matter." A ripple of shock moved through the onlookers. Maya looked up slowly, surprise flickering through her tired eyes. Evan's hand on her back grew firmer, protective. Ruby swallowed hard. "I was only trying to protect Daniel," she said quietly. Her earlier confidence had evaporated. Her voice sounded thin, almost pleading. People misinterpreted. The first officer did not budge. "Your statements will be taken separately." She turned to Daniel again. "You both need to cooperate with our instructions." The words "public disturbance" landed heavier than any insult. Daniel's eyes widened with a hint of fear. Every American traveler understood that airports were strict environments where even small disruptions could lead to serious consequences. Daniel forced a weak smile toward the watching crowd, but it only deepened the discomfort among those observing. "I think you are making a mistake," Daniel said, voice strained. "She always acts emotional. She is overwhelmed. This is nothing serious." The officer responded with calm firmness. "Sir, we watched the interaction. The raised voice came from you. The distress came from her. The footage is clear." Daniel's posture slumped slightly. The first officer now turned toward Maya. "Ma'am," she said gently, "we want to ask if you would like to file an official report regarding what happened." Maya blinked, startled. She glanced at Evan in confusion, unsure how to respond. Having someone ask her what she wanted felt foreign after so many moments of being spoken over. Evan leaned closer and whispered softly, "You do not have to decide right now. Just breathe. You are in control." Maya nodded faintly and took a slow breath. The officers waited patiently without pressure. Before the conversation could continue, a paramedic in a red vest approached with a medical kit. "We received a call for a pregnant passenger in distress," he said. He knelt slightly beside Maya. "Ma'am, I need to check your breathing and heart rate." Maya hesitated, then allowed him to proceed. The paramedic placed a small sensor on her finger and counted her breaths. "Your breathing is stabilizing," he said reassuringly. "Stress can elevate your heart rate, but it is coming down. Are you feeling any abdominal pain?" "A little tightness," Maya said quietly, "but I think it is just stress." Evan stayed close, watching her carefully. "She has been through a lot," he told the paramedic. The paramedic nodded sympathetically. "I can see that. She should rest as soon as possible." The attention from the paramedic made the nearby passengers murmur with renewed empathy. One older woman whispered, "She deserves protection, not humiliation." A young man added, "This is exactly why people need to be held accountable." "Nah." The first officer stepped toward Daniel and Ruby again. "We need the two of you to move to a secondary area for questioning." Her voice held no hostility, only firm procedure. Daniel's frustration flared again. "Questioning? This is ridiculous. I did not do anything wrong." Ruby shook her head. "We barely said anything." She overreacted. "This is not fair." The officer remained steady. "Ma'am, sir, this is standard protocol. Failure to comply will escalate the situation." Daniel's mouth opened as if ready to argue again, but he caught the looks from the surrounding travelers. No one supported him. Not one person in the crowd nodded or agreed. The isolation of the moment hit him like a weight across his shoulders. Ruby tugged anxiously at Daniel's arm. "We have to go," she whispered urgently. Her earlier arrogance had been replaced by fear. "Just do what they say." The officers guided Daniel and Ruby toward a designated side area near the security desk. The crowd watched them walk away. Some shook their heads. Some folded their arms. Some looked at Maya with gentle reassurance. The atmosphere shifted completely. No longer a chaotic scene, but a moment of accountability slowly unfolding. Maya stood beside Evan, breathing deeply. Her body still carried the exhaustion of everything she had endured, but the air felt different now. It no longer pressed against her like a weight. It moved clearer, lighter. The officer's presence and the reaction from bystanders made her feel, for the first time in a long while, that she was not invisible. Evan stood close enough to shield her from the attention but allowed her space to breathe. "You are doing great," he said softly. "Just keep taking it slow." Maya nodded again, placing one hand gently over her belly. The paramedic remained nearby in case she needed further care, but she stood steady enough on her own feet to not require assistance. As Daniel and Ruby disappeared with the security officers, a sense of seriousness settled over Gate C-12. The feeling was unmistakable. A line had been drawn, a rule had been violated, and consequences were finally catching up with the two people who once believed they could twist any truth to their benefit. Maya remained still, her breath rising and falling in slow waves. The world around her no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a place where her voice mattered again. The crowd stayed quiet, sensing that something significant had happened. And as the officers escorted Daniel and Ruby further away, the entire terminal seemed to recognize that the balance of the moment had shifted. Justice, for the first time today, felt close enough to touch. The atmosphere at Gate C-12 felt heavy with expectation as the officers guided Daniel Wells and Ruby Hawthorne back toward the waiting area. The chatter that had filled the terminal earlier had vanished. Travelers stood still, watching the two figures approach with the same intensity one might feel before a verdict in a courtroom. Daniel's face was pale and drawn. Ruby looked even worse, her eyes lowered, her hands trembling at her sides. The confidence they had worn only an hour earlier had evaporated completely. Evan stood beside Maya, steady and watchful. Maya held her belly with both hands, exhausted but calmer than she had been since the chaos began. Her breathing was slow, controlled. She did not look at Daniel or Ruby as they approached. She simply stood quietly, waiting. A few steps behind her, the paramedic remained alert in case she needed assistance. A senior security officer stepped out from the nearby security booth and approached the center of the gate. He held a tablet in one hand, his back straight, his expression firm. He did not raise his voice, but the authority in it carried through the entire terminal. "We have completed our review," he said. "We examined the full CCTV footage and listened to the statements provided." Daniel swallowed hard. Ruby shifted anxiously as the officer continued. "Our findings are clear, Mrs. Collins did not cause a disturbance. She did not act aggressively. She did not initiate any confrontation. She remained calm despite being under severe emotional stress." He turned slightly toward the crowd. "She attempted to de-escalate multiple times." A murmur of approval swept through the travelers. Someone whispered, "Good, that's the truth." Another said, "She deserves respect." The officer then directed his attention to Daniel and Ruby. His expression hardened. "Mr. Wells, you raised your voice repeatedly toward a pregnant passenger. You created a public disturbance. You escalated a private conflict in a crowded gate area. Your live stream further intensified the situation." Daniel looked down, his breath catching in his throat. The officer shifted his gaze to Ruby. "Miss Hawthorne, your statements were provoking and contributed to the emotional distress of Mrs. Collins. Your actions were not aligned with the safety expectations at this airport." Ruby nodded weakly, her voice barely audible. "I did not mean any harm." The officer did not respond to her comment. "Airport protocol requires us to take these violations seriously. Both of you will receive official written reports in your names. These reports will remain in our system." The crowd reacted again, this time more openly. A woman in her 60s shook her head. "About time." A man near her added, "They brought this on themselves." Daniel took a shaky step forward. "You are misunderstanding everything," he said. "She is emotional. She always reacts this way. I was just trying to get her to calm down." The desperation in his voice could not hide the fear beneath it. "You cannot blame us for everything." No one believed him, not even Ruby, who stared at the ground as though wishing she could disappear. Then the officer spoke again. "At this time, both of you are required to leave Gate C-12 immediately." "You can't." Daniel's eyes widened, but before he could protest, the officer added, "However, before we escort you out, you may speak if you believe you have final statements to make. Keep it brief." The gate fell silent. Daniel looked at the officer, then at the crowd, then finally at Maya. Something inside him collapsed. His legs trembled, his shoulders dropped, and in a sudden, shocking motion, he lowered himself to his knees, right there on the polished airport floor. A ripple of disbelief spread through the crowd. Travelers gasped quietly. A teenager muttered, "No way." The paramedic blinked in surprise. Daniel lifted his trembling hands slightly toward Maya. "Maya," he said, voice cracking. "Please, I am sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was angry. I was stupid. I should have listened. Please forgive me." His face flushed with humiliation, but he kept speaking, nearly choking on the words. "I panicked. I said things I should not have. I did not think it would go this far. Please, I am begging you." Ruby stared at him in shock for a moment, then fear overtook her. She fell to her knees beside him, her voice trembling. "Maya, please, we were wrong. I did not think. I followed him. I said terrible things. I know we hurt you. Please, please, do not let this be worse for us." Their voices echoed across the gate. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the desperate pleading of two people who had finally run out of excuses, out of lies, and out of places to hide. But Maya did not respond. She did not take a step toward them. She did not offer forgiveness. She did not even look angry. She simply stood quietly beside Evan, one hand resting over her belly, her expression calm but distant. The silence she held was stronger than any words she could have spoken. The senior officer waited a moment, then nodded to the two kneeling figures. "Stand up," he said. "It is time for you to leave." Daniel's voice cracked again. "Please, Maya, stand up," the officer repeated. Reluctantly, Daniel pushed himself to his feet. Ruby followed with trembling legs. Their faces were drained of color. Their humiliation lay plain before everyone present. Two officers moved to their sides, positioning themselves firmly but without aggression. "This way," one said. "You will be escorted out." Daniel and Ruby began to walk, not with the swagger they once had, but with the slow, heavy steps of people who had finally realized the weight of their actions. The officers guided them through the gate area, ensuring they could not linger or attempt to retake control. The crowd parted silently, watching with cool, steady judgment. They were not walking out, they were being removed. As their figures disappeared down the corridor, the tension in the air softened. Conversations resumed in gentle murmurs. A few travelers approached Maya with warm smiles and kind words. "You stood strong," an older woman said softly. A young airport employee added, "You showed so much courage." Maya nodded slowly. Her eyes shone, but her expression carried a quiet peace. She leaned gently toward Evan, allowing herself to take a deeper breath than she had in hours. Gate toll felt different now, calmer, safer. For the first time that morning, it felt like the world had shifted back into place. The days following the incident at Gate C-12 unfolded with a slow and steady calm for Maya Collins. She remained at her brother Evan's home, where soft light spilled through the curtains each morning, and the quiet hum of the neighborhood replaced the chaos of the airport. Her body needed rest. Her mind needed quiet. Evan made sure she had both. He prepared warm meals, kept her hydrated, and insisted she avoid anything that might trigger stress again. Maya did not argue. She felt the weight of exhaustion deep in her bones, yet there was a sense of relief that came from being in a safe place at last. While Maya recovered, the outside world reacted swiftly. Within 72 hours, both Daniel Wells and Ruby Hawthorne walked out on bail after signing required documents at the administrative office. They were free, but only in the physical sense. Their release placed them under an even harsher spotlight. The footage from the airport continued to circulate at remarkable speed. News stations replayed the moment security confronted them. Social media users debated every second of the video. Clips of Daniel yelling at Maya and Ruby making dismissive comments spread like wildfire. Neither of them could escape what the public now saw as undeniable cruelty toward a pregnant woman. Daniel's company issued a suspension letter the same day he was released. The law firm representing his biggest contract withdrew its partnership immediately. Friends distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with him. Ruby experienced an equally rapid downfall. Her employer removed her name from the staff list, changed access passwords, and sent her a formal notice that her employment had ended. She tried contacting colleagues, but every message was ignored. Neighbors who once smiled politely now shut their doors. They could not even walk outside for groceries without being recognized. Whispered insults followed them through the aisles. Camera phones pointed in their direction. Headlines painted them as symbols of arrogance and cruelty. Within days, their comfortable lives collapsed into silence and humiliation. Inside Evan's home, however, peace took gentle root. Maya spent her mornings sitting beside the living room window, sipping warm tea with honey. She watched the trees sway in the breeze and allowed herself moments of reflection. Her breathing grew steady. She slept more easily at night. Sometimes she whispered to her unborn child, promising protection and gentler days. Evan often sat nearby, reading or working quietly, so she would never feel alone. He did not bring up Daniel or Ruby unless she asked. His presence was enough. Late one afternoon, when sunlight stretched long and gold across the porch, a soft knock sounded at the door. The moment it echoed through the hallway, Evan paused. Something about the knock felt hesitant, uncertain. Maya looked up from the sofa, sensing the shift in the room. Evan walked to the door carefully, opened it with caution, and found Daniel and Ruby standing on the porch. They looked nothing like the confident pair from the airport. Daniel's clothes were wrinkled. His hair was out of place. His face carried a haggard weariness. Ruby's eyes were swollen, her cheeks flushed from crying. They stood close together, not from unity, but from fear. It was clear they had nowhere else to go. "We need to speak with her," Daniel said. His voice was low, strained. "Please, just for a moment." Evan did not move aside immediately. He glanced back at Maya, silently asking if she wanted to continue. Maya rose slowly from the sofa. Her steps were calm, steady. She stopped near the doorway, far enough to keep distance but close enough to be heard. Daniel lowered his eyes. "Maya," he began, his voice cracking. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did at the airport was unforgivable. I have lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends." He swallowed hard before continuing. I am sorry, truly. I did not understand how much harm I caused until the world showed me. Ruby stepped forward slightly. I am sorry too, she whispered. I said cruel things. I followed his lead. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know that does not change anything, but I needed to say it. Maya listened in silence. She did not look away, nor did she show anger. Her expression remained calm. Evan stood behind her, a quiet shield. Daniel raised his eyes for the first time. Please, he said softly. If there is anything left that can be repaired, even a small part, I beg you to tell me. Maya's breath steadied. She reached toward the small folder resting on the hallway table. She had placed it there hours earlier, almost as if she sensed this moment might come. She removed a single sheet of paper, held it gently, and extended it toward Daniel. His brow tightened as he took it. When he unfolded the page and saw the title, his face fell. Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. The paper trembled in his hand. Ruby looked away, unable to face what the document represented. Maya's voice filled the quiet porch. This is all that remains between us, she said. You hurt me deeply. You endangered my child. You turned our lives into something unstable and frightening. She inhaled slowly. I need peace. I need stability. And I cannot have either as long as I am tied to you. Daniel tried to speak, but no words formed. His shoulders collapsed inward as if the weight of the paper crushed the last of his pride. There is nothing left to fix, Maya added. This chapter is over. Ruby wiped her eyes and stepped back. We understand, she said faintly. For a long moment, none of them moved. Only the sound of leaves rustling in the evening wind filled the space between them. Finally, Daniel folded the paper carefully, nodded once, and turned away. Ruby followed. They walked down the driveway without looking back. Their footsteps faded into the quiet street until the two of them became nothing more than fading silhouettes. Evan closed the door gently. He placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. You were strong, he said. You made the right choice. No, Maya let out a long breath. She felt she had been holding for months. It needed to end, she replied. For me, for my child. They returned to the warm living room where the lamp cast a soft glow across the walls. Evan prepared dinner while Maya settled back onto the sofa, resting her hands on her belly. The house felt safe. It felt steady. It felt like home. As dusk settled outside, Maya closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She knew the road ahead would not be perfect, but it would be peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that tomorrow might be brighter. She was not alone, and a new beginning had quietly taken its place.